Great. And Jennifer, we're so excited to have you here. I'm going to read your little bio. Jennifer is a customer success addict and loves helping SaaS customers find their aha moment. She's been in cloud software for over 15 years as a project manager, implementation consultant, trainer, manager of teams, customer success leader, and in her new role as a managed services leader, which we're going to get into. She is a certified project management professional with a BS in business administration and is in the final semester of her MBA program. I neglected there to mention that you're currently at ClickUp. Thank you so much for joining us, Jennifer.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Very glad to have you. And so I'd love to start with that little hint that was in your bio, which is the managed services side of things. So you've been in customer success for quite a while, and now recently are moving into this hybrid role of customer success and managed services. So if you could give us a little bit of context and tell us where you're at, that would be a great start.
Yeah, no problem. So if you had told me a month ago I would be doing this, I probably would have laughed you out of the room. Like I said, I'm a success addict. I love helping my customers. And when I was approached by the manager of our team to say, hey, we really need someone to come in and help build out this managed services team, being an admin for our customers, I'm like, why would I want to do that? And then we started having some conversations. And really what this is, at least here at ClickUp, it's almost like a hybrid role of a success manager and an implementation consultant. I have a great team standing behind me to do the really heavy lifting on the technical side, which is good news because while I'm technical, I'm not going to be building integrations. But I really feel like this is an excellent opportunity for me to see the other half of the customer experience, because my goal is really to run a CX org someday, right? So this feels like another tool in my belt and a way that I can really help my customers see the value with our platform.
So what has it looked like up to this point to be in this kind of hybrid role where you're both operating as a customer success person with a book of business, as well as then with at least some of those, if not all of them, then actually having service consultations?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think because it really is truly hybrid, and I'm still kind of working my CSM book temporarily. It has been really about anytime you're new to any role, anytime you're new to any customer, and shout out in the chat if you agree with me on this, it's about relationships, right? It's about establishing that you have the credibility, that you are there to be as much a part of their team, and maybe I would argue even more a part of their team than you are of your own. And then finding ways to not just say, what are your goals? What's your vision? How do you measure success? And what does that look like for you? But then getting to turn around and actually implement that, right? Getting to get my, roll up my sleeves, get my hands dirty and do the building to some degree, right? Testing it out with the customers and playing with it. So hopefully that answers your question, Peter. It's really been, you would feel like when you're doing something like that, it's very tactical, but actually it's probably more strategic than even when I was just a customer success manager.
How do you think that your conversations with your clients have changed so far? And I know you're a few weeks into this.
Yeah. I think that they are really more focused on the optimization of value within the tool, in that you can create automations within ClickUp, right? You can trigger certain pieces like integrations with tools like Integromat or Workato. So we're talking more, tell me about the minutia, tell me about the step-by-step, tell me about that end user experience, more than when you're in success and your strategic planning for the overall health of the account. It's definitely more in the nitty gritty and it's more detail oriented, which is kind of interesting. I'm not going to say it's not without its challenges, because sometimes you have to be willing to look just a little bit deeper. Whereas success, we're looking, I think, a little bit higher. So it's kind of doing this. And I'm trying to cover the entire range of that wherever I can to make sure that we're getting what we need. And I
Yeah.
will say too, let me throw this out. I see one of the CSMs who work here at ClickUp. So thanks for joining, James. I partner with the CSMs very heavily. That's a really important element to be successful.
I have to imagine that there are a lot of CS folks who, at least in moments in their professional career, have said, I wish I could just do this in the tool for my client. And I wonder how much, I mean, you're actually in this unique position of getting to do it and getting to do it in relationship, in partnership with them. And yet I also wonder, how much does that allow your clients to potentially disengage from the tool?
No, it's a really great point. And I have the range of all of that with my clients, right? I'm working with about 10 clients right now. And we are trying to find that happy medium between teaching people how to fish and then just delivering the package to the door.
Yeah.
So I really want to ensure, because it's managed services, this is ARR, right? This is recurring revenue. So we want to continue renewal of that service, but we also want them to feel confident in the platform that they can manage it. So I don't have the perfect answer to it yet, but what I think it is I think it's about, okay, you and or your subject matter experts are in the perfect position to manage X, Y, and Z. We're going to maintain a backlog of projects. I'm thinking between 5 to 7 projects at any time in that backlog. And so that's what will protect that revenue and get that renewal coming in. So that's what it feels like so far. And for some customers, honestly, I'm just going to have to own it, right? I'm just going to have to get in there, because the reason they're paying for that service is because they don't have time to do the administration themselves. So I think there are multiple answers to that question. It just depends on the maturity of the customer, the maturity of the relationship with me. And we have one other admin services consultant, and their tenure just in their space. If you're looking at a startup company or a young organization, it's going to be very different than, like, Salesforce is one of our customers. When we look at an organization like that, that's about governance and that's about change management. So to some degree, yes, you're doing the hands-on management, but you're also getting to do some of those higher level success motions that are really, really necessary in order for there to be a healthy environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those folks who just joined, please feel free to drop a question if you have it in the chat, and I'll do my best to pull it into our conversation. Jennifer, I'm interested a little more to understand, like, what does the sales relationship look like for the services side of things? Are you responsible for any sales yourself?
Yeah, no, I'm not, but I very quickly am seeing that we're going to be generating sales leads, right? So I did see in the chat, are we charging for managed services? Absolutely. It's in buckets of hours. We do them in increments of 10. So you can start with tier 1 to tier 6. We haven't gone higher than that yet. And just add a 0 to that for how many hours they get in a month. And so I don't have to go out and sell it, but I'm working with one customer and we're definitely going to run out of hours, and we're going to be doing it consistently. And that's where that backlog comes into play, right? And for any of you out there do t-shirt sizing, I'm starting to do some t-shirt sizing on some of those projects to say, this project is going to take, it's a medium. So we're looking at probably 20 hours, whatever the number ends up looking like. So I think you will see lead generation pretty heavily as we get deeper and deeper into the service.
What are your strategies or thoughts around really getting to understand your clients' circumstances? Because on some level, I think you really have to get in much deeper, as you've already said. And so do you think that, are you asking different questions, or how are you really getting into? I think clients will often give a surface level answer of, our goal is to do X. And then the further you dig in, the more you realize that it's really Y. Maybe even no one's going to quite tell you what Y is. But, what are your thoughts, especially as you're going into this services implementation role in a consistent basis with your clients? How do you really get deeper in with your clients to understand what success means?
Yeah, that's a really great question. It's really not about the platform. It's not about the tool. It's not about the software, whatever you're working in. It's about what problem are you trying to solve and why are you trying to solve it? And why is it a problem? Right? If we can start there, if we can start understanding the vision and we can understand the goals of what they're trying to accomplish as an organization. And I will always start off the conversation, forget about ClickUp for just a moment. Forget about what tool we're working with. That doesn't matter right now. Talk to me about you. Talk to me about your problems. Talk to me about what's working too. Let's not forget that, because celebrating the successes they have today and not losing them. Because I think it's really easy to go in and start problem solving, but does the solution end up negating what's working well on the other side? So I like to just ask clients, just pretend like I don't work for X company and tell me, how can I be of service and what problem do we need to solve and why are we doing it? And many times they will want to say, oh, but we want ClickUp to do this. I'm like, yeah, but I don't care. And that's where you get to the 5 whys. And I know many of us have used them. Just keep asking, ask why they're a problem. And eventually you'll get there.
Yeah, that's great. I know it even seems like the idea that ClickUp would launch managed services as part of a customer success effort even feels like that must be something that you're hearing from active listening with your clients, of saying, you've done enough to understand that there's a barrier here to adoption that can be addressed with managed services. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a perfect example. We were on site with a client because they're having some challenges in their onboarding. I happen to be their CSM. I'm transitioning away from it. And then we're just getting stuck. And what we finally realized on Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon was that what the real problem is they're looking for perfection in the platform. No software, I don't care who you are, no software is perfect. There is always going to be some maintenance. There's always going to be some management. So what we discovered with this particular client is that what they really need is someone to come help keep the lights on it's a very broad organization, and they bought seats for every single member of the organization. So we have lots of areas. So I think really the key is that we're identifying the admin services becomes the solution for them, even without us realizing that they needed it initially. And I think I lost track of the question. So if I didn't answer it,
No, that's great. I'm starting to think more because in the just before we hopped into the official chat, you were mentioning that it feels like it's going quite well, and it looks like you may start to grow this program at ClickUp. I'm wondering if you can say a little bit more about at least preliminary thoughts on what it looks like to scale this and to scale it alongside and with customer success.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question right now, and isn't scaling the question for all of us in the room, honestly, because as we are in hyper growth mode, we have to answer that question. So right now we're seeing an attachment rate on new customer sales around the 15% mark, which we've only been offering the services for a few months. That's remarkable, I think. And in addition to that, in this past week, we've seen 3 existing customers sign contracts. That's a lot of work, right? So the question we're asking ourselves is, first of all, segmentation is going to matter. If you're dealing with someone who's in that enterprise or strategic space, that's going to require so much more work. We have one client looking at 40 hours a month. That is half a resource. And so what we think it may scale to is myself and Kendall, who's the other ASC on our team, maybe become solution architects, change management experts. And the higher level, we scope out what the solution looks like. Then we have the customer sign off, which I think is a huge thing to make sure everybody's on the same page. And then I think we're going to be handing the builds to a team of people. Potentially, we do have some resources that are offshore. They are ClickUp employees, but they can go off and do the building, they can do the testing, they can do the QA, and then we bring it back and deliver it to the customer, because there are only so many hours in the day and the week. Plus, when you're looking at that scaling for anyone out there managing budgets, we want to make sure the profit margins are what they should be. And doing that with a resource that isn't a strategic consultant, that matters, right? Where we can use an onboarding consultant or someone who is an expert in building, and it helps protect the margin a little bit.
Yeah. So do you have a dedicated tech team, meaning those people are full-time within managed services, or do you think that that would be something you do in the future?
Not yet, but what we're talking about is maybe we have like a 4-to-1, like one admin services consultant to 4 technical resources. I think that's future. I see it being maybe 2-to-1, 2 technical resources to an admin consultant. But honestly, it's early days, and we're still trying to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah, totally appreciate that.
Mhm.
And then can you offer any thoughts on, do you think that there's a right time for all B2B platforms to integrate managed services in one form or another? Or how do you think that other folks listening in might think about whether managed services is right for them as something they should pitch internally, or right for their companies?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's it's maybe a couple of things. It depends on the complexity of your platform or your tool, right? And as there are more things to manage, and as the size, we call our instances workspaces. So as the workspaces become more and more filled with different groups using the tool, I think that that's a tipping point, right? When you're at 2 or 3 groups using a platform, no big deal. When you're at 10 or 12, that becomes a bigger deal. And again, that goes back to the governance conversation and change management and making sure everything plays nicely. So I think that's the first part of it. As far as offering it to your customers as a service, I think it becomes how big are your customers getting and how complex is the tool. So I would argue, especially in the SaaS world, software world, managed services is a thing that everyone should consider offering. I came from Instructure. Anyone out there familiar with Canvas, the LMS? Okay, cool. They had an entire dedicated team, and there was a school district in Florida, the largest one in the country. They had 3 full-time admin service consultants. So I think that there's revenue to be had there. I think there's value to be delivered. I'm super uncomfortable selling services unless I think they add a lot of value. Not in sales intentionally, but it's really easy for me to say I have a large cellular customer who I'm transitioning off my CSM book. And I'm like, you need this. And the reason you need this is you have a day job. And I think that that's the key thing when you're looking to offer this service to your customers. Your customers have a day job, and it isn't your software. And if you do have the luxury of hiring a headcount to manage that software, that is phenomenal. That's awesome. But I don't know about most of you out there, budgets are tight. And you can't always hire that resource that needs the benefits. They need the full comp package. And so hiring someone to do your admin services, I promise, costs you less than if you were to hire that full-time body. So it becomes economies of scale too, right? I mean, you have to make sure you're getting that genuine return on investment. So I would argue everyone should stop to consider, is there a market for it? Are our customers using our platform enough that there is the value? And it's a very interesting space to be in, and I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, it really, honestly, it feels to me like this could be the tip of the spear, so to speak, in terms of an emerging discipline of customer success, and disaggregating it from the sales piece, so that you can just focus on, again, providing the best experience for your client without feeling like you have to sell them on something. That feels like a really powerful model where the client can be confident that you're aligned with them and not trying to wiggle in more hours.
Yeah, and let's be honest, like I'm a problem solver. My kids will sometimes say to me, Mom, I don't need you to solve my problem. I just need you to listen to me, right?
Mhm.
But there's something really gratifying about going into the software and building it and testing it. And then the customers are even more excited. And I got to build that out, right? So for any of you out there who have this technical itch, who really like, taking the Legos and building the thing, think about that, right? Because I didn't know that I wanted to do this until I started doing this. And I'm like, oh, this is really cool. So it's something to really consider. I genuinely believe, and this will get philosophical for a second, everything happens the way it's supposed to, right? Opportunities present themselves when you potentially need them in your life. And this came to me in just the most roundabout, random way. Listen to that too. Because sometimes the thing that's in front of you that you're doing every day that you're really, really great at becomes a comfort zone, and comfort zones, I would argue, are not necessarily the best thing. So lifting myself out of my comfort zone and stretching my knowledge, and I'm working a lot. My husband's like, oh, where are you? I'm like, I'm still at work, but I promise I'm on my way. It's a temporary pain for long-term gain. And yeah, so just consider those things for any of you out there who are like, oh, that sounds like fun. It kind of is.
It reminds me of the phrase, you make your own luck, right?
Mhm.
You've put yourself in this position to then have the serendipity of being offered this opportunity as ClickUp is expanding in this direction. And so there's
Yeah.
both an element of luck and the fact that you put yourself where you are in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, super interesting. And time goes super fast. We're going to have to wrap up in just a second, and we're going to transition over to everyone here. We can transition over to a networking platform we use it called Kumo Space, and I'll share the link in the chat in a second. Jennifer, just wanted to ask from you any final reflections on what the rest of the year looks like for you, and anything that you are. I know we've talked a little bit on the professional side of things. Is there anything that you wanted to add that's a little more personal in terms of why you're excited about this and what your year looks like?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, definitely finishing my MBA. Wow, that will be a huge accomplishment by June doing that. And then really just getting to know, meeting my customers where they're living, right? I feel like that's a personal goal of mine. I think as CSMs, we do that, but now I'm doing it in a more technical way and in a way that I can genuinely start adding more value. I think one of the greatest learning opportunities I have in success, we talk about executive business reviews. We talk about that return on investment. I'm looking for the return on my investment too, right? So both personally, professionally, and with my customers, right? Finding those things that are really working well for me so I can hopefully move into that next role. And fingers crossed, being a head of a CX department one day, that's my goal. So long-winded answer to an awesome question. And to some degree, I kind of don't know, but I'm kind of excited, we're going to take the things that come and make the most of them.
Yeah, I love this. I appreciate you setting that goal for yourself too, and saying this is where I want to head. And we would love to check in with you at some point further down the road later this year and see how things are going.
That would be awesome, Peter. I'd love that.
Amazing. And so to everyone here, including Jennifer, we're going to be transitioning over to Kumo Space. I dropped the link in the chat and I'll do it again here. You will have to create an account, which takes like 10 seconds. And then it's a two-dimensional platform where we can move around and actually allows you to meet each other and interact with each other. And so we will see you there. I'll stick around here for a few more minutes to make sure that people transition over. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And otherwise, we will see you in Kumo Space. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer. Really appreciate it.